G'day guys, that time of year for a Melbourne Cup preview. Heading into tomorrow, cover the weather. The first looks like it's going to be okay. They put a bit of water on the track the last couple of days, so obviously expecting no rain and hoping for a good 4 to hopefully upgrade to a good 3 during the day. I won't go through every runner's detailed form and videos because we'll be here for too long, but I'll go through the key chances. The horses that are coming from overseas, I'll try and cover most of them unless I really don't give them much hope, and give my thoughts on most runners. It looks a pretty interesting race this year, not too deep form-wise, so not looking too hard. Just my thoughts on the race are trying to find horses that are obviously going to run the distance and have a bit of a turn of foot, preferably. Horses that don't look like they're going to give away too big a start without a turn of foot, and trying to identify horses that are obviously in the best of form and ready to go. I do take on board things like not coming into this race without a local run and things like that. It's just much better to see how they're going and understand what they're capable of as much as anything. There's a few horses here that I've entertaining that are coming into the race pretty fresh, but most have had a run here, so we'll get stuck into it. Number 1, Hartnell. I'll go down the page, probably the easiest way to go. Sorry, just got an email at the same time. Hartnell, very difficult to work out the plan behind this horse, this preparation. It obviously resumed over the 1401 there, as usual. Went to the mile group 1 and was beaten by Humidor, who was pretty dominant late against it. Then came out in a bit of a controversial race over the 1800, ridden back, and Bonneval was too good for it there. Then last time it was a bit of a give run out to the 2,000 metres. This is sort of him back here. He looked to be travelling okay here, a $4.50 chance basically. Obviously, Johannes Vermeer is coming off his back and he's the most interesting runner to come out of this race for mine. But just isolating Hartnell at the moment, he doesn't look to be. He looks a bit one-paced, and definitely a forgive effort. You see, like you can't cop much more interference than that. Lost all his momentum, and he definitely finishes closer, but he doesn't do what Johannes Vermeer did. He finishes sort of 2 or 3 lengths closer. He definitely, obviously, ran third in this race last year when presenting as the winner on the turn. After having a really nice run in transit, this is him here midfield. Pops out, and this is our man in coming wider in the red cap, but again travelling up nicely. Hard on the bridle here, and it's just the superior stayers that get past him when he's put under pressure here, and just put him away. So I don't see him running the trip strongly. I don't think he's a 2-mile horse. Very concerned about his preparation and just have to risk him. I agree that he's certainly one of the class runners of the race. I expect him to still beat more home than beat him home, simply on class alone, but just can't. I think he has to be at his best to win this race. He's got to give them all weight. And at this trip, I think he needs to be absolutely airborne, and he doesn't look to be going as well as he was last year into this race. So just leaving him out at this time. Obviously just saw Gallant there. This was his lead-up run coming into last year, so over 2,500 metres. Pretty softish tempo here. Our man coming up the inside here. His ability to pick up horses while still travelling on the bridle and then show a turn of foot is really his strongest attribute. And then he has gears like, see, it was a pretty soft win there. And then I've just seen the cup again. I probably should have covered him a bit more. So he settled quite a long way back. This is him here, back on the fence, picking horses off us we're talking about. So just travelling in behind here with the eventual second place getter Heartbreak City. He travels really strongly. Hasn't had to move on him yet. When he does, he shows his turn of foot. And he's able to sustain that. You can still see that he's building through his gears. You can see the margins opening up behind. These are sort of all holding each other, and these two are racing away. You know, it's a short margin, but he's still quite dominant, and he's dominant over the rest. There's no Heartbreak City in this race this year. As we were sort of talking about, Hartnell was flying this time last year. I don't think this race this year is any stronger than that, and I think we'll show his. So this was his first up run this time in. So he's 3 wide, no cover here off a really quick tempo. They ran extremely fast time. It's not easy to do this, especially first up. So he takes the front. He carried 61 kilos here this day. As we said, this was first up for nearly a year, 298 days off between runs here. And even though he's quite soft on him late, he's still strong in the line, just showing what a strong stayer he is. He then went to the 2500. He's back here on the fence. They ran even faster, about 12 lengths quick to the turn, to the 600. And here he is back here in the white cap. Restricted room. So again, he's just a bomb-proof horse where he can just travel and get himself out of trouble with his turn of foot. Obviously flattered by the tempo, but look at what the rest of them are doing, and he's not even touched him. Like he's got more up his sleeve. That's as impressive as a win as you'll see over that sort of distance. Carried 61 kilos again. Obviously it was only a listed race, but still, you know, they were pretty promising horses, and that was his second run back after 300 days off, over 2500. He then came out in a day where I thought it was a big advantage to be on the inside here. I don't know whether this race carried possible penalties, but he was a short price favourite, and there was just a smell about this race that he may not have been prepared. Certainly as a grand final, it was just a ticking over run to have him ready for the Cup. Eventual winner here, Emily Starr, which we'll talk about later. Here he is here, exposed nice and early, widest. Again, travels like he does, but just looked like he was a little bit underdone here. He was 3 weeks between runs, and it just looks like they've looked after him a bit. He had the pattern against. The time was good again, and his effort was okay. But I'm just treating it as a barrier trial. I don't think he's overly vigorous here, and he certainly doesn't drop out or do anything crazy. He's just there, and if you treat that as a barrier trial, this horse is absolutely flying. He's won 4 of his last 6. His effort first up was huge. Forgiving that last one, he should have probably won 5 of his last 6. He's carries 56.5 kilos here, which is about 4 kilos more than he carried last year, I believe. 4.5 kilos. Frankie Dettori, he's not won this race before, but he's won just about every other race in the world. I'm not worried about him, even though he's got a bit of a poo-poo about him here when he comes to Australia. But he's a top-class rider. There's no worry with him whatsoever. At $10.50, I've definitely got him top pick. Again, and $10.50 looks well and truly a value for me in an open race, obviously. Humidor's another interesting horse. There are quite a few interesting. I'll try and skip through the ones I'm not that interested in a bit more, but this horse has to be touched upon simply because of where he comes from. His recent form's obviously good, very similar to what Hartnell came in with last year. The only difference with Hartnell, he had been proven over this sort of trip before, even though he's a bit of a tough going thing. So this preparation, he resumed 1400, went through the motions over 2 14s, built into a 16, and was dominant over Hartnell, Blackheart Bart, over the mile. Not even bothered watching that, as the mile's a bit short to even worry about. He came out and he was a little bit flat behind Winks over the 2000 at the weight for age, step weight penalties. Dropped back to went to the 2400 at Caulfield, and we'll show this run. The important part's probably at the start, where he's bustled into a position early and you can see he's going quite keen. He's then exposed. He's the first exposed without cover horse. He's then still right there, getting knocked off his balance a little bit there, which wouldn't have helped him. And he wants to lay in under pressure, but he's right there and solid to the line. Like, his efforts is definitely, apart from that sort of inside being the best place to be, his efforts as good as any in the Cup. There's no doubt about that. The winner there, we'll talk about Marmello in a second, but then he came out in the Cox Plate 7 days later, dropped back in trip. He's put to sleep on the fence back here. Here he is, travelling strongly. They threw the blinkers on him. And he's just probably a little bit one-paced, whereas Winks always has that turn of foot. And was just able to hold him off late. You see then he still wants to lay in a little bit under pressure, but she's a strong horse. So he drops in weight. That he obviously carried the 59 there, drops to 55.5, 56. The more I look at him, the more I want to throw him in a little bit closer to the top than what I have. Actually, he's got the right rider. He's riding well. He'll ride a patient race. They've left the blinkers on, which is quite interesting. They obviously think there's no issue with the distance. That's my only query with him, that he runs out a strong 2 mile, but apart from that, he's got the best of weight for age form. He's got really nice miles under his legs. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th run into the prep. He's in the right stable. He's drawn okay. He's got a lot of ticks, but he just has to tick that 3,200 metre box, and considering he's nearly the same price as our Mandan, who does tick that box, probably, you've got to be swaying that way, but definitely, I think I marked him $21 early. I think I might have been a bit aggressive there, and might trim him up a little bit, but still, he has to run that trip out, and he's probably had his 2 grand finals already. Tiberian's the first of the Raiders we cover. Interesting form it's got. It's only 17 starts, 6 wins. It's not one past. It's one at 3,000 metres, so that ticks that box for me. I think they've only got to win past 2,400 for me in the UK to really think that the 3,200 won't be an issue, especially with they don't bring them out here for nothing usually. Tiberian's won 4 of its last 5 starts. Its only defeat was in the St. Cloud in France in the Group 1. Oliver Peslier's been riding this horse all its way through. He's come out here a week early. He doesn't do that for nothing. We'll just have a look at its replays. So what the interesting thing here, so it's led here. I'm not going to show the full replay. It's led at a really slow tempo. You can see that they're all stacked up behind. He sort of pinches that length at the top of the straight, never really gets away from them. My issue with this horse is simply that I don't think he has the turn of foot probably necessary to hold off at quite a few good horses here, but I do think that he is a horse that needed to draw a gate to hold the position to be able to be right there on the turn and fight them off. So that was his win leading 2 starts ago. This is his win last start. Again, I won't bother showing. He sort of lobs into a position here. He ends up 4th, 1 out in a perfect position. They don't do a lot for most of the race. Here he is 4th. Don't really get serious. Still turning for home here, so this is where he's had every conceivable chance again. He's within a length of the lead. He never really shows a great turn of foot. He has a little sprint, and then he can maintain that. And I think this horse down the outside, you see where everyone's kind of spruiking. This is the horse that won at the Breeders' Cup yesterday. I can't think of his name, Talismanic, and he was quite impressive yesterday, well ridden, does have a turn of foot, so it shows to me that they've really gone slow here, and if this horse can't make any ground, they must be all pretty sprinting home at the same sort of pace. So he's just held on, he's obviously got a bit of strength about him, and you see there when the jockey switches him off, he holds that sort of momentum to the line, so which again to me says he's a one-paced animal that can be dangerous if he races near the lead. I don't want to see him coming from well back and trying to run them down, I wouldn't imagine. There's nothing to say that he can't do that, but he definitely looks to be far better suited up on the speed. He's been in field sizes of 5, 7, 10, 7, 7 his last 5 starts. He now goes to a 24 horse field. There's a few things against this horse for mine. Gate 23 is the issue. Not being able to hold that spot without doing some work early. It's going to take a great ride. I think they do have to chance their arm a little bit and push forward early. The speed of the race is a little bit up for grabs, as in there's not super duper speed on paper, but you do have a few drawn wide here. Montaigne probably rolls forward, Gallant with him, and then you've got a lot of horses with decisions that don't really want to lead, but would like to find on-pace positions, probably Boom Time, Emily Starr, Single Gauge, try and just head left and try and get as close to the rail as possible. The ones outside are the ones likely to push on. Your horses like Marmello, Montaigne, Gallant definitely, Thomas Hobson is certainly a chance of doing that, and even US Army Range is a big chance of doing that. Tiberian's drawn in no man's land, and really that's probably my biggest issue with him individually. But I'm throwing him for the places, the bottom places. Definitely risking for the win. Marmello, the Spruik horse from the Caulfield Cup, his form before that is quite interesting. I'll show you a couple of replays before we look at the Caulfield replay. I'll just watch the Caulfield replay first, because it's here. Obviously great to see that he's had a run. He was 62 days between runs before this. Importantly, he sort of misses the kick a little bit. Here he is here, and eases to the fence. He's back well on the fence here, coming to this point of the race. I'm treating this as a complete barrier trial, third last defence here. Sort of gets checked off heels there when Wall and Fire runs up the back of them. Wicklow Brave runs up the back of them. Here he gets to the outside here. It was obviously very difficult to run on wide. I've got a few things that are sort of hurting here. You see the pace has helped. They've gone at cracking tempo. This horse, Abbey Marie, is probably a better run. Got Humidor up on the speed, who's a similar run, but it's done similar effort. So we've done a lot more work up on the speed. He's in a better part of the track. Johannes Vermeer's coming up in behind them. It's done even less work in the run. But the important part is the way Marmello closes off that last part. He's not a sit sprint type. Here he is here, trying to work out sort of what he's given away. He is trying to lay into. Once he finally drags him to the outside and straightens, he does his best work late. Traditionally, it's always like he's only just nutted Humidor on the line, who's done a lot more work in the run, raced far more prominently. So the only way I can get this horse really hard in the race is if you treat this as a barrier trial. Nearly happy to do that because it looks like it was their intent from the start, going back and running home. We'll go here. His previous efforts. This is his run 2 starts ago. So 3 starts ago when he ran second to Talismanic. So Talismanic's the one here. Marmello's on his back. What I want to display here is his lack of turn of foot, basically. Sorry, so Talismanic's even come from further back, has it? Or is it the one in front of it? Pardon me. No, it is the one in front of it. No, it's the one down there. really well organised here. It is the one in front of it. So he's trailed the winner through, and the winner's left him for dead. This horse does have a good turn of speed, which was evident yesterday in the Breeders' Cup. He doesn't. Like you can see, he's got a little burst, but he just keeps building and building and building. He's a momentum builder. So for me, he's another one who just really needs everything to go his way in order to continually be able to build up his revs, get through his gears. The distance is going to be no issue, but his turn of speed is definitely going to be an issue for mine, as in it stops him from being bomb-proof. He may struggle to get out of trouble if he starts to lay in or if he's held up at all in running. And you'll see there his stamina's no issue, he's still surging to the line. I'll get rid of that so I don't actually have to worry about looking at it again. His previous run to that, his last run's the pre-Kergolay. Just here, and this time, interesting just to watch the start. So he's not really got any gate speed, but he's kind of left there and takes quite a long time to work his way to that forward position. Ends up with a manly uncontested lead and is able to... Oops. Not going to help anyone. So the other horse to look at here is Red Cardinal down the outside. They've absolutely walked here. He's able to build up the pressure nice and early. And as again we'll see, it's hard for any horse to sprint off this sort of tempo. You know, a staying horse. A few horses flattened by this bloke. But he's at his top nice and early in the straight, and he never really gets away from them, but again he sustains that run. Red Cardinal's just completely tempo affected and can't get near the leader, but he is strong through the line once again. So his ability is his strength. It's definitely not his turn of foot. He's drawn to need a bit of luck. I think if his mind he presses forward, he's the one who I want to see joining in on the turn to be winning. I don't want to see him coming with a horse like Almandon or Rekindling or Johannes Vermeer, because I think he may get out sprinted, but if he's off and gone, he could be a nightmare to run down. So definitely a winning chance. Needs a great ride from Bowman. If they jag him at the start, I think he's a risk. If they sort of gamble their hand a bit and try and push forward to the first 5 or 6 to make sure that they can be in front of a few of their rivals, I see him as a major player, but just lacks that turn of foot. Red Cardinal, we've half covered there. I thought his form, I'll watch his replay in America 2 starts ago. So this is the Belmont International Cup. Don't have to watch too much. They sent out a pace setter here. So this is Red Cardinal back 4th, 5th last. He gets going 3 wide. Just a perfect race shape for him. Gets a toe into the race. Wall of Fire, obviously. Interesting horse, was left in front a long way out, sat outside a fast tempo, or chased a fast tempo. Red Cardinal has done no work, had a drag everywhere into the race, came to the outside. He does have a little bit of a turn of foot, as we'll see there. He sort of lets down and then holds them off quite well. When the horse comes up to him and challenges him, he definitely looks to lift, and he's got some solid form about him. His next run after this was the Kergolay race behind Marmello. He carried 60 kilos there. He drops to 55 kilos. Marmello carried 59 kilos there and drops a similar weight to 55. So he meets him marginally better at the weights. He's got Karen McAvoy, which I think I think he's the best staying jockey in the world just about at the moment. I think he's incredibly patient. My issue is he's going to have to pretty much jag this horse out at the start, and he's going to have to circle the field. I don't think he's got enough on them to do that. I think he's been beaten comfortably by Marmello a couple of times. He's got form around Marmello Talismanic, which is obviously solid. It's just he beat Marmello. Marmello's beaten him. He's got form. That's just the one run. Looking at the wrong person there. I was confusing myself into thinking his form was a bit better than it was. He's a horse that I think faces a huge task simply from the barrier as well. He had to draw soft to give himself the best chance, maybe sneak inside runs, which McAvoy's really good at doing. He really needed to be fast run, bunch, and come with a really well-timed run from Karen McAvoy, I think, to be winning. I'm not saying he can't win by any stretch. He's got a lot of ticks in the boxes. He arrives here 79 days between runs, which is not ideal for a horse that needs a bit of help as well. So I'm risking him. Johannes Vermeer, I'm pretty much not even looking at any of his form before he got here. He'd never won past 2,000 metres before he got here. Still hasn't, actually, which is a bit of a worry. Obviously, his biggest worry. I can't get this run out of my head. His first run back in Australia, obviously it was over 2,000 metres. He was ridden well back. They did only run an even tempo here, and it was extremely hard to run on and extremely hard to run on wide. So he's here in the white cap. Saw this run with Hartnell. His turn of foot, he's quite exceptional. Gallant chop was still, building momentum here and ran home in good time in the right part of the track. And this horse is doing something in the race that no one else was doing. He obviously started favourite, or close enough to it, in a Caulfield Cup. He ran right through the line there. He again drew inside, ends up back in the middle here. Just kind of watch him here. When his stablemate comes back through the field, this is Johannes Vermeer trying to sneak inside runs, which again was the best part of the track to be on. His momentum gets held up by his stablemate there, and he's forced to check in between runners. He then has to switch again. To me, he's not a Caulfield horse. Obviously, he's run well there twice now, but I'm excited to see him get to Flemington. He definitely wasn't stopping through the line there. He does have to get the extra trip, but I do think this gate 3 is the making of this horse. He can be put to sleep. He can pick off runners travelling on the bit and really can show a dynamic turn of foot when exposed. He's one I'd be holding up for as long as possible and then letting him rip. But he's the question mark horse from the distance perspective. If he gets it, he's got the turn of foot to match his stablemate Almandon and Rekindling, which we haven't got to. He's an exciting horse. He could be 12 months away. He might not run the trip, but you must put him in. $10 is an interesting price because he's probably a $4 or $5 chance or a 25, 30 to 1 chance. So $11 is probably fair enough. Not a horse that I'd be looking to unload on, that's for sure, but certainly looks right in this race if he runs the distance. Aidan O'Brien, one of the best trainers in the world, wouldn't be sending him if he didn't, even if Lloyd does own and does love to have his runners go around in this race. Stablemate Bondi Beach, I bet up on this horse last year, didn't really do a lot, was beaten 11 lengths. His run since have been a bit lacklustre. He was obviously gelded in the meantime, had excuses on both occasions. Shows up here with the blinkers on, third up off 2 runs beaten, 6 in equality and 10 or 11 in a listed race. I could throw him in for 3rd and 4th just in case from the inside gate because he does have the ability. He did display great ability early in his career, especially his 3-year-old season. Form around the likes of Order of St George, beating Order of St George in a Group 3 and then narrowly beaten at Group 1 level on a couple of occasions. This is his 3rd crack at the Melbourne Cup and just have to leave him out for mine. Max Dynamite, interesting horse that ran in this race 2 years ago, obviously was the horse that knocked over half the field head right to the business part of it. Probably the ugliest Melbourne Cup of all time, and not really a great form reference for mine. You'll see him try and work to the outside here in a second. Here he comes. He does a right hand turn here and knocks half the field over in a second. Boom. Here he is. Gets to the outside of the eventual winner, Pirates of Penzance. Richard Penzance. And chases hard. He does have a turn of foot. He's a hurdler. I really got great respect for the trainer, who's a old punting sort of trainer who loves to set his horses for targets. And this is Willie Mullins I'm talking of, and he obviously has had issues since this run. He had 205 days off, hadn't won again and then he had 413 days off. So important to note, this was 2 years ago that Melbourne Cup run was. He then took him to a really dodgy little 3,400 metre open race last start, and he was a soft winner. No sort of chance of a penalty there. He's just trying to get the horse back on track. I love that he's got Zach Purton for the ride, 54 kilos. You don't see Zach Purton ride at 54 very often. That's a positive and a negative. A positive that he's going to do it, a negative that he's got a waste to get to that sort of weight. He's got a great turn of foot. He drew the gate that he needed to draw. He can race in the first half of the field. He ticks a lot of boxes to be a place chance at absolute worst. I think $15 at the bottom of his range. His depth of form is not super, and that race was very ugly. If you use that as your only form reference, it's pretty tough. But he doesn't look to be coming in here in the same sort of form that he did. He was in coming into 15, but again, the trainer's so smart that it's hard to say that he's not. He was dominant, and that last win to show that he is back on track to a certain degree. But whether or not he's at his peak or not, we'll find out on Tuesday. I'm definitely throwing him for placings, but not with any confidence from a winning perspective. Fincher Storm's one horse that I do want to be forgiving of. I thought his runs have been quite good this preparation. Only beaten 3 lengths first up in a 1700 metre listed race, dropped back to the mile, which wasn't suitable, and made late ground against Humidor, Hartnell, Blackheart Bart. Have a quick look at that because it's last section. It was held up in behind here, and when they're all building momentum, it wasn't allowed to. Complete forgive. Came out and did find the right part against Winks, but I thought didn't have everything go its way. Was forced to do a bit of chasing, held up here in between the two Williams runners, which was not ideal. Got the gap, found nicely, and just completely outsprinted by Winks, which is acceptable. Humidor chasing hard in from behind. It was tough to run on here, so his effort was similar. But as you can see, there's not much difference between them, strength on the line. And this horse then had an abscess issue, I believe, heading into the Caulfield Cup. Forgivable run. It was in close enough to the speed, and definitely didn't finish off back here. But not disgraceful, not weak. And if you tack on plenty of improvement, if there was a foot issue, which there's no worse issue than a foot issue for mine, and a no more forgiving thing than an issue with a foot for mine. This horse can improve, and he's $34 and one of my better roughies in the race. I did have good Group 1 European form, mainly sort of Group 3, Group 1 in Italy before coming to Australia. Wicklow Brave's another one of my biggest roughy sort of horses here. I won't watch all the replays because I'll cover most of them with rekindling, but has form around or won a hurdle in April, and then beaten 2.5 by Red Cardinal in that race at Belmont Park. He's had plenty of racing since, just narrowly beaten by Wicklow Brave. As I'll show the replay later, rekindling was a bit unlucky there and certainly dominant. Then again, strong. Was beaten 8 lengths behind Stradivarius Big Orange. That is good form for this race, Desert Skyline. Beaten 8 lengths again by Order of St George, 14 lengths by Order of St George in the Group 1 St Ledger, and then came out and thought was a forgive run. I'm not saying, there's horses with stronger form, like when you look at a horse like Rekindling, it's very hard to see how this horse can beat it, but it's more of a value perspective. Here it is here, held up on the back of Johannes Vermeer, totally knocked over, basically lost all momentum, and from that position it's very hard. Again, ran up their backsides and whacked away on the fence. I just think this horse is a serious improver. It's hard fit, got plenty of form, had a run here, got run around, it's got form around, like it has beaten Order of St George at Group 1 level before it came to this preparation. So Wicklow Brave certainly has the ability, needs things to go its way, draws ideally, can race handier than a lot of them, ticks a lot of boxes at $71 if you forgive a few little things in its form. And it's carried 60-61 against some good horses, 62 against Rekindling, and now drops down to 54 kilos here, so it's well in at the weights as well, and well worth forgiving. I could have something small on at the win, but definitely throwing it in exotics. Big Duke's obviously more known as a local horse, has been here for quite a while. He's won 7 races, 6 of them I believe for, 5 of them for Darren Weir, 6 of them for Darren Weir. Has Group 1 form over the 2 miles in Australia. The depth of that, it is Group 1 level, but the depth of that is an issue. We're talking polarisation, who shot the bum, Big Duke, in the Sydney Cup earlier in the year. Came out and was a good second, again at Group 1 level over 2400. That Sydney forms just doesn't seem to stack up too well year in, year out at this level, and the horses all around it seem to be a bit weaker than what we see here. I do think he's a very honest horse. I do think he'll run the trip out, and he's obviously well weighted. He's another one that probably goes into the bottom end of exotics, but definitely not a horse that I can either back or entertain as a winning chance here. I just think the depth of his form's not there. US Army Ranger was a former Starr 3-year-old that really just hasn't come back as well. His form we're talking to Highland Reel, 4 starts back, 10 lengths, beaten 3 lengths in a huge, when dropping hugely in grade over 4,400 metres. He whacked away, stepped back up to Group 1 level, and beaten 11 again. Then last start beaten 8. I can't see him I can't entertain him as a winning chance here. He's drawn terribly. I'm not really sure what to make of him, but I am risking him. Boom Time's been a bit of a revelation of late. I've had a really good look at this horse because he just looks a bit of a forgotten type. He's winner of 7 races from 32. He's definitely in career best form. There's absolutely no knock on any of his runs this preparation, really. He raced a bit close at Moonee Valley, the only time he was beaten 5. Then he came out and chased a slow tempo at Moonee Valley behind John Snow. Then he sat up on a fast tempo, even though he did sort of have cover behind Lord Fandango, but battled away well. Found the right spot in the Caulfield Cup, absolutely no doubt about that. He had to be sort of just in behind the speed there, had cover. Did have to work to get out and was strong to the line, strong through the line. The $1 million question is how strong is that Caulfield Cup form? The time looks okay. He obviously had his chance there and remains down in the weights, 53 kilos here. Does he run the distance? He's only had 1 shot at it and led on a heavy 10 and dropped out and was spelled immediately in the Sydney Cup. He was in the betting there, $14. It's hard to knock him too much at $31. He looks like it's about a fair enough price, and it's similar to what I've basically marked him. He's a horse that could... I wouldn't be surprised if he bobbed up, but he's a horse that I probably... If you had told me a month ago, I would have been very surprised. So, for me, he's one I'm probably leaving out, but wouldn't be surprised if he's still there doing his best very late. Gallant, Sydney Cup winner 2 years ago, hasn't really done a heck of a lot since. Resumed from a long break and wasn't a bad effort when second throughout. After that, This is last year we're talking about. Beaten 14 lengths, 22 lengths, 18 lengths, and then 4 lengths in its latest start in Group 3 company when really not looking like doing a lot. And every chance. Looks a horse that'll probably press forward from the wide gate, and one that I just cannot entertain and think he'll be one of the ones struggling from the turn. Librand number 17 has very similar form to Big Duke, but probably a couple of lengths shy of his form. Every chance the other day when Who Shot the Barman beat him home, he really had his chance to swoop down the outside there when it became a bit of a swooping event just by them packing up before the turn and a few other runners being held up. His form early in the prep was good. His 2,000 metre win was good. I thought he was a leading chance in the Metropolitan, but he had his chance there and really did not enough. Have to risk this horse. Akita's an interesting horse. Its form's really solid. 7-year-old gelding come over here from the Jardine Yard. 31 starts, 5 wins, 8 seconds, 3 thirds. Obviously a very consistent type, placing on more than half of its occasions. Hard to line up his actual form though. It's quite. He's never really reached the heights of a lot of these horses, but he's not been tested at them. His last win was obviously in the Ebor handicap, which can be a good guide to this race usually, but he was extremely well ridden. It didn't look like a vintage Ebor. They did put a bit of a gap on the third horses. He's not a horse that I can really entertain. He's won up to 2,800, which is okay. He's got distance form around here when he's run second at his only attempt. It's a horse that I just really couldn't imagine being up to these class-wise. He'll run an honest race. He's a horse that I wanted to see probably draw a soft gate to really entertain him as a trifecta player. Single Gaze from the Nick Olive Yard. What a horse it's been now, winner of $2 million plus in prize money, and second in the Caulfield Cup last start, chasing the tearaway leader and holding off all but one runner. Its efforts, all preparation, have been full of merit. It's been set a task at most of those runs and just keeps on doing her absolute best. She's drawn to get the perfect trail. She's never been tested at anything near 3,200 metres or at this level. She carries the same weight she carried in the Group 1 Caulfield Cup when running second, and she goes around here at 60s. Can't knock it at the price. Absolutely no knock it. If you want to back it at that price, it definitely can't put you off it. But if she wins if she wins this race, it's going to be a heck of an effort. You know, she's a horse that placed as 2-year-olds in major races, and now here she is as a 5-year-old mare running in a Melbourne Cup. Good luck to connections, and she does look to get the right run. It's just a matter of whether she runs it out strongly. Wall of Fire's a very interesting runner. Sorry, just has been seen here recently. I'll show you its last 2 runs, which are both quite promising. Had no luck in that Belmont Park run when racing up on a quick tempo behind Red Cardinal. If we're forgiving of that, and its depth, it has no depth to its form before that. The Group 3 2 starts ago. Is this it? So this is behind Defoe. Wall of Fire's back here last. Back last. Back last, pulls to the outside. So Defoe, the winner's here. This is Wall of Fire, who looks to be sprinting quite well. Looks to actually show a turn of foot. And Defoe cuts him off. And then he's forced to change tact. And Defoe's a pretty classy type. This is a few levels lower than, other horses we're talking about, but he does continually find the line. The margins are opening behind, and I don't want to be too negative of that. Performance at all. Sorry, I just lost track of where the replay I was looking for. So it's then come out in the Caulfield Cup off the back of that. Sorry, not the Caulfield Cup, the Herbert Power, and ridden stone cold again. Obviously another day where it was tough to run on, but they did go extremely quickly in this race. This horse, Wall of Fire, was dragged out the back. Here he is here. He's forced to sort of run wide and build these revs. Here he comes down the outside here. Again, we got the issue is if you're treating this as a barrier trial, it's a great barrier trial. Gallant Chieftain, he's not a horse that I want to be backing in a Melbourne Cup. But then we've got Boom Time, who's come out and won, Melbourne Cup, and then we've got Boom Time, who's come out and won a Melbourne Cup out of this, and Lord Fandango, who's come out and run really well following this also. So if you treat it as a barrier trial, it's a great barrier trial. If you're testing it as a class perspective, it's difficult. Merit in the run, they certainly ran good time. It was difficult to run on wide this day, so he's ticked by both those boxes, but he was pace assisted. And has he got talent? There's no doubt about it. Where does he get to in the run? Probably goes back of midfield from the middling gate. He looks to race better when he settles off. He does have a bit of a turn of speed and does tick a lot of boxes. Gets the visors on and the blinkers off. I think he's well found around the $13 mark, but he's one that probably goes in for minor placings in trifectas, risking him for the win simply on a class perspective. Thomas Hobson's looks to be a little bit overspruiked for mine, drawn gate 21 here. Joe Moreira comes to ride, gate 17. Desert Skyline, which we talked about, it's not bad form for this, but it was the only really interesting form line I could find. He's a strong winner over the hurdles. I like it, hurdlers that have a turn of foot. This horse doesn't have a turn of foot for mine. He's the one that I really don't want to entertain too much as a strong winning hope, and I'll be letting him go around for mine. From that gate, I think he's going to have to do too much work. And if you want to put him in, he's your third and fourth man as well. I can't have him as a top two horse. Rekindling's probably the horse I'm most interested in this race. I love that he's up and running as a 2-year-old. He's come back as a 3-year-old and run in some really good races there. Beaten a long way by Wings of Eagle, and was probably a big price at days. Come back 29 days later in Group 2 form, beaten Wicklow Brave, and I just want to show a couple of these replays. What I like about this horse is his turn of foot. So he's last here. Sorry, he's not, his second last on the inside, the Lloyd Williams colours. Wicklow Brave's outside the leader, so we've got quite a few interesting form lines. I know he's 60 to 1, Wicklow Brave, but he's got some decent form around him. He's off and gone here, and you can see this horse just stone cold held up. Looks to come to the outside. It's hard enough to do this for sharp sprinting types, but staying middle distance horses, or we're getting up to 2,800 metres here. These sort of horses are really struggle to overcome these sort of obstacles. Mainly pace, and so he's able to overcome a few hurdles, burst through a gap, really limited room, and really you can see he's only just warming through the line. A great sign, and a lot of hidden merit in that run for mine. He then came out following that and ran second to Order of St George. No real point watching the full replay here. He had his chance at this point. He chases a very good horse in Vain, but he is quite dominant over the rest of the runners behind. Make no doubt Order of St George would be a short price favourite if it was here and weighted with any sort of comfortable weight. You see the big margins opening up behind there. That was the St Ledger trial. Then came out in the St Ledger again. He's out the back here and upheld up. So these are serious horses we're talking here. This is a Group 1 St Ledger. He never looks like really winning Rekindling, but you can see that he's sprinting with these horses and making ground against some serious horses. Here he is down the outside here, running in onto their heels. He's a serious animal. Whether he's 12 months away or not, we'll find out. But to me, he draws ideally. Corey Brown will suit this horse. He does look a bit of a sit and steer type that will take him a long way, and he'll only have to get into him late. I don't want him to be in a driving finish, but $15 looks great considering his form lines alone. I love the Order of St George form. I love the effort beating Wicklow Brave. His only real failure was this run at Group 1 level as a late 3-year-old. He's now run against the best in that Group 1 St Ledger, and his effort, really, really strong there. There's not much more that a horse brings to this race for mine. He's lightly raced, he's on the up. He's a definite player, and the more I look at him, the more I like him. Emily Starr is a local. 2 lifetimes for this horse. Peter Moody's lifetime, when it just went from a maiden to a Group 3 in 4 runs and was as dominant in every race. Then came back, obviously had 560 days off following that Group 3 win. Tragically, I think had tendon injuries. Came back and built into its preparation before winning a race at Morphettville, Group 2 over a mile. Put in a great effort in the worst part of the track at Doomben, over 2,000 metres, then put away for the spring. Love horses that come through that carnival. Really seemed to thrive. Came back, built again into its preparation. Was a good thing beaten behind Hardham, I thought. Then another good thing beaten its next start behind Harlem when dragged right out of the race. Took care of our Mandan obviously this day, but did have a bit in her favour to do so. But what I like is the way she sort of just maintains that top effort when allowed to settle in her races. Last start we saw what happened to her, simply like she's ridden out of the gates like it's a 7 furlong race and used up. You can see here how much petrol he's had to use to cross these runners. So she's been gassed early and then grabs hold of her to try and get cover. They run fast tempo. She has the balls to charge into the race again. She's on the fence and she's right there to 150 to go. So that's 100 out. She's only 3 lengths off him. She has to stop considering the work she's done both at the start and to get into the race again, chasing a tearaway leader. She now goes to 3,200 metres for the first time in her life. I think she'll be put to sleep early. Gate 10, hopefully Yendall just gets across. I hope it's drawn directly inside of single gaze, that she drags her across into a midfieldish position, maybe a little bit forward of midfield. She can be allowed to build the revs up there, 51 kilos on her back, and Yendall, I think she's probably the best other local chance if we're calling our Mandan a local. The best other local chance, can't really call Rekindling or Johannes Vermeer a local, but they kind of are as well, locally owned. I think they're clearly the top 4 picks, $23 now, and maybe get a little bit better because people look at that last start as a failure, but definitely reasons why she failed there, and she can definitely improve. And Sis Montaigne down the bottom, he's just done a great job to get into the race, but does have a serious class risk about him. His form around, Big Duke, who shot the barman, these horses look to be a little bit tested here, and I think it's great for the owners that he's made his way into the race. He'll probably give him a nice sight because he does have some good speed, but I think he'll be found out at the end, and hopefully he'll put up a good Brave sight, but not one that I can really see in the finish. I've provided some sheets as well that go along with this, and the only horse that I'm probably having a second look at is Humidor. I've got him marked $21 there, and probably bring him down a little bit. His efforts, and he deserves to be a little bit shorter, even though he doesn't tick the 3,200 metre box at this stage. I do think the clear horses to beat are Almandin, Rekindling, Johannes Vermeer if it runs the trip, and Amelie Starr. Almandin ticks all the boxes, has to go on top for mine. $10.50 I think is the best price around. I can see at the moment, just looks great odds. If I'm going to have one bet, it's definitely it to go back to back, only because it ticks all the boxes. There are queries about the others. Obviously, Johannes Vermeer does have to run the trip. Rekindling hasn't had a run here, which is not ideal, but does look well and truly on the up. And it's just a matter of whether he's being seasoned for another campaign or whether this year is his year. May get a little bit better than the $15 around to find out. And Amelie Starr at $23 looks the best of the locals for me. Two roughies that I'm looking to forgive and throw in are Fincher Storm and Wicklow Brave at about 40 to 1 and 70 to 1 respectively, and definitely expecting Marmello to run well as well, but I think $9 is short enough just for where it's going to get into the run, and it's just a little bit of a lack of turn of foot. It's just more of a grinding type that I think needs to be ridden positively early to get the best of him. So good luck, guys, and hopefully everyone finds a winner on one of the toughest days of the year on the punt, but obviously most enjoyable, and that's what it's all about. Thank you.